2, 1. Welcome to Vigilant News, everybody. We have a special for you today, the suicide special. We went ahead and put together a compilation of articles you think you're going to want to know about. And I'm Justin with Vigilant News, and I'm joined by my co-host, of course, Ryan from Vigilant News. Ryan, how are we doing?
I am thrilled to be here, ecstatic to talk about these suicides.
That's right. And we are on YouTube, which we haven't had the pleasure of being on for a few weeks because for whatever reason, YouTube just keeps giving us strikes. I don't know why. We're just reporting what the mainstream news has to say. So in case you've been yearning for Vigilant News and to see our beautiful faces and this curly-Q mustache, as I know all of you love, make sure you can go down into the description for all of our alt video platforms, Rumble, Odyssey, BitChute, you name it. So with that, let's go ahead and get into these news stories. Which one are we going to do first, Ryan?
The first and biggest in a slew of recent homicides, suicides, is Jeffrey Epstein's close friend and pimp, Jean-luc Brunel, found dead in an apparent prison suicide. He allegedly hung himself while prison cameras were not working at the time. Which is a wild coincidence.
Guys.
It's probably just a coincidence, to be honest. You know, the odds of the same exact thing that befell Jeffrey Epstein happening to his close friend and associate is pretty common, I'd say.
Yeah, I'd say so.
So Jeffrey Epstein's close friend, associate, and French modeling agent Jean-luc Brunel was found dead in prison today in an apparent suicide. It wasn't today. It was actually a couple of days ago. According to a previous Gateway Pundit report, Epstein once allegedly had three 12-year-olds flown in from France and delivered to him as a birthday present, as a former sex slave says in a newly released court document.
No kidding.
According to former bookkeepers, several girls presented to Epstein worked for MC2, the modeling agency owned by Jean-luc Brunel, a longtime acquaintance and frequent guest of Epstein's. Brunel received $1 million from the billionaire around the time he started the agency. So maybe he's on the Epstein payroll. I mean, at least in this instance, he was. So we have a clip from a 60-minute segment that aired, I think, a long time ago in the 90s. We could at least play the first,
minute or two?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is this man, the head of Karen Models, one of the largest and most prestigious agencies in the country. His name is Jean-luc Brunel. The girls told us Brunel is very careful about the models who are under the protection of Eileen Ford. But Courtney and Sherry, who are not Ford models, told us about the dinners he invites his other girls to attend with his male friends.
It's a me, Marcus. You are there for the purpose of somebody wanting to take you home to bed. He is acting as a matchmaker. He's got the agency. He's got the girls. His friends say, oh, Jean-luc, I'd like to meet some girls, or we're having a party tonight. Can you bring some girls?
And what happens if you say no?
You don't work.
You've actually known, be very careful of this, you actually have known that he has made someone pay a professional penalty for saying no.
I know, I paid a penalty for saying no.
Right.
I was personally proposed to by himself, Jean-luc, and I said, no way. I laughed in his face, and I had no more appointments, and I never worked. A lot of these bigwigs at the agencies literally have a scale where in this hand they have your career, and in this hand they have what they want. And your career can go up if they get what they want. If they don't get it, your career goes down.
There it is. So yeah, that's that guy. It's the kind of fun and games he's got going on. Well, he did before his untimely suicide. The Daily Mail reported on Jean-luc Brunel's death the other day. Jeffrey Epstein's French modeling agent friend Jean-luc Brunel, who allegedly procured more than 1,000 women and girls for the pedophile financier to sleep with, died today in an alleged prison suicide. And let's be clear, it's not just for Epstein to sleep with. He was providing them to a lot of people.
That's right.
It comes days after Prince Andrew agreed to settle with Virginia Roberts' lawsuit accusing him of sex abuse after they met through Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Roberts accused Brunel, 74, of procuring more than 1,000 women and girls for Epstein to sleep with, and he was awaiting trial in France for raping minors. So he died while in prison for the very thing that we all suspect of him. And, it's interesting that this happens right around the time of Prince Andrew, because he was, this is unconfirmed, apparently brought Jean-Luc also procured girls for Prince Andrew. So just kind of strange timing there.
Yeah.
However, video cameras were not running at the time. He died in his cell that he shared with another inmate. Sounds familiar.
Yeah, we've heard that before.
So prosecutors in Paris confirmed Brunel was found hanging in his cell in La Santé in the south of the capital city in the early hours of Saturday morning. Quote, is a night patrol found his lifeless body at about 1 a.m., said an investigating source. A judicial inquiry had been launched and early evidence points to suicide. The interesting thing that I heard was that sheets weren't allowed in these prison cells. So I wonder how he got the sheet to hang himself.
Yeah, exactly.
It was in December 2020 that Brunel was indicted after 2 days of interviews by examining magistrate and specialist police from an anti-pedophilia unit. He was arrested at the city's Charles de Gaulle airport while trying to board a plane to Dakar, Senegal, telling detectives, "I'm going on holiday."
Wow. No kidding. So, I mean, everybody knows that, or everybody is highly suspicious of a certain death. I have to be careful what we say here on the good old Google Tube, but there's reasons to be suspicious of the official story. We'll just say that. So, all right, so let's get to our next story in the suicided lineup here. We have another awesome piece on the prestigious organization, undergroundnewswire.news.
Hey, God love those people. God bless them.
And, you know, before we even get started into the article, this is John Mcafee in October 15th, 2020, saying, "I am content in here. I have friends. The food is good. All is well. Know that if I hang myself, a la Epstein, it will be no fault of mine." Essentially saying that if I get whacked, then it's probably not because he was actually committed suicide. So since his death last June, the internet has abounded with conspiracy theories over how John Mcafee died. Adding fuel to the conspiracy fire was the fact that the Spanish government, who was holding him on charges of tax evasion to be extradited to the United States, has held his body from the family for over 7 months. Why would they do that? After suspiciously holding his body for 7 months, this month, a Spanish court ruled that Mcafee took his own life. The ruling by the judge confirmed the findings of the original autopsy, which declared his death a suicide. As she did with the original ruling, McAfee's widow, Janice McAfee, has appealed the ruling, insisting her husband was murdered. Joy Anathesiou, excuse me for the pronunciation there, Joy, a lawyer for McAfee's daughter, identified only as Jen, told the financial news site MarketWatch that Janice immediately appealed the decision to a higher court, though he noted that there was no timetable yet on when the higher court would rule on the appeal. Quote, "At this point, we don't really know much aside from the ruling. It's been a long, strange process." So there you have it. There is a lot of suspicion that McAfee might not have actually died by natural, or the suicide story might not be actually valid. So,
well, they let his wife see the body when it first happened one time, but the thing was, she wasn't allowed to go into the room with the body and see it. She had to view it from behind several walls of glass. So that's suspicious in itself. So, you know, there is some weird stuff hanging out around this death, suicide, whatever it was. And I guess we'll never know.
Yeah, well, time will tell. All right, what else we got in the suicide lineup?
This one's fun. Bernie Madoff, everyone's favorite NASDAQ guy, who is also deceased himself. His sister and her husband were found dead in suspected murder-suicide. The sister of the late fraudster, Bernie Madoff, and her husband were found dead in Florida in an apparent murder-suicide, authorities say on Sunday. How wonderful. Sandra Weiner, 87, and her spouse, Marvin, 90. Oh, man.
It's a geriatric murder-suicide right there.
Yeah, I can't imagine what that spectacle looked like. Whose lives were among those destroyed in Bernie Madoff's $65 billion Ponzi scheme, were discovered dead from gunshot wounds in their home Thursday afternoon in Boynton Beach, the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office said. Deputies received a call at about 12:55 p.m. about the couple being unresponsive in their residence, authorities say. Upon arrival, deputies located an elderly female and a male deceased from a gunshot wound, the sheriff's office said. Detectives from the Violent Crimes Division are investigating their deaths as a murder-suicide, authorities confirmed. It wasn't immediately clear who killed who, but the couple's kin requested that the authorities shield the name of Marvin, citing Marcy's Law, which allows relatives to protect the names of crime victims. Weiner and her husband had not been spared by her brother's financial crimes, with the couple reportedly losing $3 million themselves when this Ponzi scheme came crashing down in 2008, which is small. There was a guy who lost, I think, $1 billion and jumped off a building, or was thrown off a building.
Right, yeah.
She lost millions in this whole thing, a source told the Post in 2009, a year after it all happened. It happened in 2008. Before Madoff's crimes came to light, the siblings appeared close. The Wieners had lived near his Palm Beach estate in the Ballin Islands Country Club, a gated enclave home to celebrities such as Serena and Venus Williams.
Andrew Madoff.
This is Andrew Madoff, also deceased. In 2009, they downsized after selling their home, yada, yada, yada. Weiner had been among 5 of the relatives who received packages filled with pricey heirlooms, allegedly mailed by Madoff and his wife, Ruth, on Christmas Eve 2008, just days after the financier's sons turned him over to authorities for defrauding his clients. Though his sister did not work for Madoff Securities, her son, Charles, 50, toiled there for decades, once serving as the director of the administration. What's very sad about these sons who turned in one of the biggest, most powerful men at NASDAQ, they're both dead. So another of Weiner's sons, David, confirmed in 2009 that his parents had suffered financially as a result of the Ponzi scheme. Yes, my family's a victim, more so than anybody else. It's very painful, he told the Post. No further details were immediately released about the circumstances surrounding their deaths. The deadly incident at the couple's home was first reported by the Boca News Now. In an email sent to residents in the couple's Valencia Lake neighborhood, a community leader confirmed the deaths. You can read about that. Bernie Madoff, who pleaded guilty in 2009 to running the Ponzi scheme, died in federal lockup in Butner, North Carolina in April as he received a 150-year life sentence. He was 82. His devastating financial crimes have been linked to a number of tragedies. His elder son, Mark, one of the ones who turned him in, hanged himself on the second anniversary of the fraudster's 2008 arrest and left behind a bitter note saying, "Bernie, now you know you have destroyed the lives of your sons by your own life of deceit. F you," wrote Mark 48. A little suspicious there. If you're going to write a suicide note, the whole extent of the end of your life is just this one little statement, "F you, Dad." Like, it's just, I don't know.
I don't know. It seems a little dubious.
It's a little fishy that everyone around this guy is dead. The convict's younger son, Andrew, also blamed their dad for his recurrence of the rare cancer mantle cell lymphoma. Which killed him in 2014. Andrew was only 48 when he died. Quote, "One way to think of this is the scandal and everything that happened killed my brother very quickly, and it's killing me slowly," Andrew told People magazine before his death. Madoff's ripoff was tied to the suicides of 3 investors, including a hedge fund executive, Charles Murphy, 56, who jumped to his death from the luxury Sofitel Hotel in New York in 2017 after his firm invested $7 billion with the financier. I guess that's enough to make you take the plunge.
I mean, that's what, like 3 suicides to speak of in
well,
this one
not
story.
including the murder-suicide of his.
That right. So that's 5, I guess,
Yeah.
we're talking about. So that's a lot of suicides. I mean, what is the statistical probability that a person would have a suicide like 1 or 2 degrees separation away from each other?
And they also have 1 or 2 degrees away from Jeffrey Epstein, being the big players on Wall Street, Bernie Madoff, NASDAQ. Epstein worked at Bear Stearns, all of these folks, the financial elite, they run the same crowd. So it's interesting that all these deaths are happening.
Exactly. And, I suspect that there's a lot of insidious activity that was covered up by these suicides. So with that, let's get to the last one in our suicide lineup here. And just before I get into this, I want to make it abundantly clear. We don't revel in the deaths of people. We're not making light of this in a pejorative way. We're not making fun of it. We're certainly not doing any digital harassment YouTube. So we have all respect for human life, including the people that we might not think are the most idealistic with their behavior, like Murdoch, like Madoff.
We're not trying to make light of suicide. It's a serious thing. No one should take their own life if they can avoid it.
Of course. Yeah, there are suicide hotlines out there, ways to get help. So please do that if you're feeling any issues at all. Okay. Let's get into the last one, which is Ghislaine Maxwell's family fears for her safety after deaths on Epstein's associate, death of Epstein's associate. So this is an opinion article, but it's containing a bunch of facts here. Ghislaine Maxwell's family, or Ghislaine, excuse me, is now concerned for her safety after a man who is known as Jeffrey's Pimp was found dead in his prison cell for what is believed to be a suicide. So even her family is like, I don't know about this whole suicide thing, guys. It's alleged that Maxwell, who was convicted of sex trafficking last year, introduced the deceased fashion designer Jean-luc Brunel to Epstein, the New York Post reported. It's really shocking, Ian Maxwell, a sibling of Ghislaine, said to the Post. He continued, another death by hanging in a high-security prison. My reaction is one of total shock and bewilderment. That's probably a pretty healthy reaction. He said that her family fears for her safety after the deaths of Epstein and Brunel. Quote, despite the psychiatrist advising to the contrary, she was deemed a suicide risk and they are continuing to wake her up every 15 minutes in the night. It's a complete violation of prison rights and human rights, he said of her treatment in prison. Maxwell insisted his young sister is not suicidal and said that it was ironic that Epstein and Brunel, who died of apparent suicides, were not on suicide watches in their respective prisons. Epstein had been taken off suicide watch shortly before his death in August 2019. Last month, Ghislaine Maxwell, 60, officially requested a retrial after the juror case told the media that his own experience of being sexually abused in order to influence his peers on the jury to reach the guilty verdict. At least that's the claim. French modeling agent Brunel, who allegedly have gotten more than 1,000 women and girls for Epstein to sleep with, was found during the check-in at 1 a.m. in his cell, the hanging, and he was hanging when he was in the cell, the Daily Mail reported. So, we have people being suspicious of the death and things like this. So I think there's good reason to be highly suspicious of all this activity. And it speaks to the fact that there might indeed be some kind of tying up of loose ends happening here.
It could be that. Could just be a bunch of suicides.
Could just be a bunch of suicides.
Just say either way.
Yeah, exactly. We don't know. We're just a bunch of schlubs who, to read articles for a living.
A couple schmucks on the internet. What do we know?
Exactly. So with that, if YouTube, I want to remind everybody, we just launched the under construction version of vigilant.news. So if you go there, vigilant.news, you can sign up for email updates. You can bypass the censorship, and eventually we'll have the site up and running, and it's going to be packed with a lot of awesome stuff.
Yeah, only about 20% of our content makes it to YouTube, if that. So
precisely, yeah. So don't also forget to check the links in the description for all of our alt platforms. Rumble is the biggest one right now for us. So with that, thank you so much.